Got the stringers painted. Got two of them, the bottom one and the one for the left side were done yesterday. I did yesterday, and so they've cured overnight. They're ready to work on. The one for the right side here, I just did it this morning, so it's going to take a while for it to cure. They're just painted with Stitz, the epoxy primer. We've got them set back in here in the tabs. This is the bottom one. Got it set in here where it goes in the tabs. I took some Exo Rust and painted the raw holes on these tabs where I drilled through them for the screws. Everything's all painted up and ready to go together, so I'm going to start putting this bottom one on. It all goes on with screws on all these tabs. I use safety wire back here to hold this on where it fares up into the aft portion here in the tail, and I'm going to leave this vinyl tubing on there for cushion against that, and I'm going to leave the slit in the vinyl tubing down. This will go up into that vinyl just fine without rubbing on the metal, and then I'll use safety wire here to wrap over that to hold that on there. Got holes, two sets of 2 holes in this front Piper channel where it comes back here, and so there's got plenty of engagement with this stringer in that Piper channel there. I'll put safety wire here and back here to hold that down, hold that in. I got the first screw put in the tab here, and even though I painted this stringer and paint got down through the hole drilled in it, and I painted the Exo Rust in the hole that I drilled through this tab, and I'm using a stainless steel screw, I went ahead and put Peralcatone on that screw when I put it through there. And I also used, there's a nylon lock washer on this screw. That's a number 4, a 440 screw, and a nylon lock washer. But I also used a nylon washer underneath the head of the screw and underneath the nut itself. So I'll go ahead and do the rest of them the same way. Okay, I got the bottom stringer mounted. As did earlier, I put safety wire in 2 holes up here in this Piper U channel that's part of the brick-brack or chicken house or whatever they call this stuff up here. But anyway, I put that on there. Now I'm going to turn this over and put some Peralcatone on the bottom side of these safety wire, and so it gets down inside of that channel. But I got all of the screws through, and I put a little bit of Peralcatone on each one of those. Everything went a lot smoother than I thought it might, or was worried that it wouldn't. The biggest problem I had was handling those little tiny nuts and washers with my fat fingers. And then down here on the tail, I wrapped that in an X over that little cross brace right there with some safety wire, double wrap, and I've got it centered. Looks like it's almost perfect there. Measured it out, and so I'll put a little Peralcatone on that so it coats those safety wire and those holes real good. Okay, putting this left stringer on, and I turned the fuselage up 45 degrees. It puts it at a little better angle to work at, a little better position to work at. I've got it taped up here to keep it from falling down back here too much. And I'll come up here and start measuring down, use the measurements I took off of that other airframe and where I laid out all of this friction tape, and start tying it up. Now I've got it slid into this tube, and it did scratch the paint off of there as it slid in there, but I put lots of Peralcatone in there, and so that slid in there pretty good and held in there pretty good. Well, I finally got this left stringer on here finished up. It's quite a bit more of a chore than doing that bottom stringer. Every one of these is safety wired on instead of being bolted down. There's no brackets for it or anything on there, so you kind of have to measure it all out. The fuselage has a definite curve to it as it comes down, and of course all those are all square planes coming around, but as you put that stringer on there, it's got to fare out like fairing out a boat. So you got to watch each one of those stringers where they're placed, or you get a little hump in it or lump in it. Every one of them I did, I went down and eyeballed down it and made sure it was faired in with the one behind it. It's straight, made a nice straight line. These tubes where they come down, I kind of wondered why they had washers to fill out between those tubes here and in the stringer on the airplane that I looked at in Birchwood when I went up there and picked up my fuselage. But after getting to look at it, I could see why. These tubes, when they go on there, they're welded on, and not all of them follow the same line. They're the same distance out from the longerons, the upper and lower one of them. Of course, there's different diameters of tubes. Like there's 3 different diameters of tubes on there. So the smaller diameter tubes, if they're centered on the longerons, then they're not going to stick out as far as the 5/8 diameter tubes. And the 1/2 inch diameter tubes are going to be different yet. Some of the 5/8 diameter tubes in different plane than the rest of them. So some of them were just safety wired or attached right to the diagonals, the tubes, and some of them we had to fare out, fill in behind them with a washer. The airframe that I looked at that they were doing up north, they used steel washers in there, probably fine for them for most airplanes, but I didn't really want to put steel in there, especially bare steel or even aluminum. I found some plastic or plasticized washers, some fiber washers, and I used those to fill out behind the places where they need to be filled out. And I've got that faired in pretty good. It looks pretty nice. It's all safety wired in, and it's all in there good and tight. So I'm pretty happy with that. But it takes quite a while. There's a couple times I didn't get it quite well, like this one on the 1/2 inch piece there, that one wasn't as tight as I'd like it. It rocked a little bit, so I redid it. And there's a couple of them I redid after I got them on there. It's on there now, and it's faired in pretty good. A couple of the spots down there along the line there didn't line up with the measurements that I'd taken and marked on there where I had it laid out before. But that's what I had to do to get it faired in, and it wound up being in the right spot back here on this last one. You can see they got friction tape on there to insulate between the steel tube and the aluminum stringer, and of course I've got them painted. That also keeps the safety wire from chafing in. It tightens down tight on that friction tape. Here's one here that I didn't need as thick a washer as the other one, and these are plastic washers. I couldn't drill those washers out, the center hole out on them. They just wouldn't drill, so I just drilled 2 holes in them on each side for the safety wire to go through, and that worked out fine. This one didn't need a washer. This one has one of the thicker fiber washers on it, and again I had to drill the center holes out on those to make them fit. Now here's one of the 5/8 tubes that wound up with a large washer on it to space it out, and then it wound up being in a different spot than what I'd measured. This is the original hole that I drilled in there for the safety wire, and that would have put it in an odd spot there. It wouldn't quite fit, so I had to drill another hole, and of course scraped a little hole scab in there. But this is a small one, small tube, 3/8 tube that needed 1 washer. Here's a 3/8 tube that didn't need any washers at all. It was out farther in the plane. So that's my left-hand stringer. There's a double wrap of 032 safety wire on these. The stringer on the right side is all installed, and it came out pretty good. It's nice and straight, nice and tight. Here's where it fits into the Piper channel as it comes out of the baggage compartment. I just drilled a hole there, made a double wrap of 32,000 safety wire and tied it off in there. Of course, put a little bit of Pralcatone in there. And then this first diagonal here that comes down, that was just strapped right on there with the safety wire. And the next one, the big one, just safety wired on. We had one thin plastic washer on this one, and strapped right onto that one. This one here I had to put two of those thin plastic washers on to get it to fare out. Now this one I had to cut a piece of UHMW, and I cut a quarter inch thick, and then sanded down just a little bit to fit in there for a shim. And that's how much variance there is on some of these. And this tube here is a little less than a quarter inch. I think that was like 3/16. Another piece of UHMW trimmed up to fit in there. This one here didn't take any. One little washer here, and then tied off on the back and fared out.